Anuvin. What is it? Is it heaven? Is it hell? Or is it something completely different? Well, that's what I'm here to find out. So let's start with the pronunciation of Anuvin. I've seen it pronounced in a number of different ways. The simplest, Annwn. But most spellings have Anuvin spelt with an F between the W and the N, which is pronounced as a V in the Welsh language. So Anuvin or Anuvin is my preferred pronunciation. Now, to help us understand what Anuvin is, it might be helpful to look at the derivation of the word. Now, it's been suggested that the word comes from an old Gaelo-Brythonic word, and a dubnos, which literally meant otherworld. And so that's what Anuvin is. It's the Celtic Otherworld, or underworld, or the realm of the spiritual. So we know of Anuvin today through a number of old manuscripts, and these were written down in, I think the oldest sources go back to, well, for the Mabinogion, it was the 11th century. It's the best estimates at the moment. There are some manuscripts that are attributed to around the 9th century, I believe, in the Book of Taliesin. So these stories were written down, or the sources came from, well, let's say the earliest would have been the 9th century, but I think it's fair to say that the majority were around about the 12th and 13th century. Now, that doesn't mean that was the origin of these stories. It just means that when they were first put pen to paper and written down, because these stories come from, and it's fairly well agreed by most scholars, that these stories come from a much older oral tradition. To get a better picture of Anuvin, let's just step back a little further than the medieval, and let's go back to pre-Roman Britain, back into the Iron Age, back into the Bronze Age, and possibly before, and look at what we fairly well know were the belief systems, or some of the belief systems, of the Celtic people. I think it's quite fair to look at the Bronze Age, Iron Age inhabitants of Britain in a very similar light to how we may have seen a number of other indigenous populations before their world was, well, probably for want of a better word, corrupted. These indigenous populations share very similar belief systems. The belief in a spiritual world and a physical world. The belief in the fact that all things are created from the spiritual and exist in the spiritual before being manifest into the physical. And that then infers that all things in the physical world have quite clearly come from spirit and therefore possess spirit, or possess an essence of the spiritual world, I think would be fair to say. And it is this spiritual side that comes to us in the medieval texts as Anuvin. Now, some of the stories that have come to us infer Anuvin as being akin to hell, and when we look at the context of these stories, they tend not to be based on the older oral tradition, but stories that were derived much later and then loosely based on some of the older manuscripts. But they have become highly Christianized, obviously, by this time, because in the Iron Age and the Bronze Age, before, there was no concept of Christianity, and there was no concept of a pure right and a pure wrong. Everything existed purely on the spectrum between the physical and the spiritual world, and good and bad were evident in both. We then have some characters such as Gwyn Ap Nudd was considered a devil. As we delve deeper into the stories, we see a much different picture than that idea of hell that is given to us in the post-Christian or the Christian medieval period. And we see a place of spiritual enlightenment, the place where all beauty begins, a place of enchantment, a mystical place, and this is Anovin. This is the place where all things in physical existence first begin in the spiritual realm and then manifest into the physical world, and when they die or decay, then they return back to the spiritual realm in Anuvin. Now, just to solidify this concept a little, it's worth considering a concept that there's no evidence for this, or for us to say there is no evidence for us to say that this goes back before the time of Iolo Morgannwg. But that's not to say that it should be, that it has no value. A concept is a concept, and if it means something to you, then it's worth contemplating. Now, this concept is the concept of the three circles of existence. And in the three circles of existence, everything starts in Anuvin. Everything starts in the spirit realm. And those things that are due to manifest to the material then manifest into the physical realm, which they call our bread. And then this is a cyclical iteration between life and death. And the idea is that each time you live, you learn more, you become wiser, and you take those lessons back to the Anuvin. And when you've gone through enough of these iterations and you've reached a state of purification, then you go to a new realm, and that is the realm of the Gwynvid. Personally, I see that's a bit simplistic, but that's my own personal belief, and you can believe just exactly what you choose, what makes sense to you. It's all about trying to find the truth, and it's the personal truth, not my truth, not anybody else's, but what makes sense to you. Let's move back on to the mythology. And the Mabinogi brings us in the first branch two kings of Anuvin. The first being Arawn, who appears to pull. And he is destined, I suppose, for want of a better word, he is destined to fight with his rival Hafgan in a yearly battle. Now, it's interesting to note that the name Hafgan immediately jumps out to me. Now, Callan Haf, which I've discussed before, Callan meaning the first, Haf meaning summer, and Hafgan means summer white. And then when we again look at the name, or what some people have suggested, the name Arawn has derived from Aratro, meaning to plough. So there's some obvious things that just jump out here, and the similarities between the Oak King and the Holly King, who are destined to fight. So Hafgan would clearly be the light half of the year, and Arawn, with the ploughing, the corn and the grain, would indicate the dark half of the year. Now, another thing to point out here is that this battle was won by Arawn. Cutting a long story short here, it's won by Arawn, and that would indicate then, if it's the dark half of the year that wins, then this is at the time of the autumn equinox, where the dark half starts to win the battle, or at Samhain, where he has truly won the battle. Later we come to two other characters, Gwyn Ap Nudd and Gwythyr ap Greidawl. Let's look at Gwythyr ap Greidawl and the meaning of his name. The English translation of that is Victor, son of Scorcher. And Gwyn Ap Nudd means, well, it simply means white, son of Nudd. A son of Scorcher, Victor, son of Scorcher. Well, that clearly is a sun god. And Gwyn, white, son of Nudd, could be alluding to the white of the winter. What's more interesting again is that these two characters are also destined to fight in a yearly battle, only this time it's on the May Eve Beltane. No, it's not unusual in the Celtic world to see a god take it on two different aspects in different times of the year. So, Annwn and Gwyn Ap Nudd could well be two different aspects of the same god, the god of the dark half of the year. And Hafgan and Gwythyr being two different aspects of the god of the light half of the year. One battle takes place between Gwyn and Gwythyr at Beltane, and the other battle takes place between Annwn and Hafgan at Samhain. These are just my thoughts, so do your own research, but those points just jump straight out at me. Now, I've not strayed from the main topic. All of these gods I've mentioned are gods of Anuvin. So, in mythology, Anuvin is sometimes given to us as a location, and that location is sometimes an island off the coast, and it's an island that mysteriously appears and disappears. And also, it's given to us as a realm under the water. So Anuvin exists beneath the water, beneath the seas, beneath the lakes. And also, it's been described as being under the earth, so underground, hence underworld. But of course, Anuvin was the spirit world. It didn't really matter where individuals thought it may exist. They all believed in Anuvin as the spirit world.